Hey, I'm John Cannell, and today on Preppy Kitchen, we're making an easy, amazing sweet potato casserole. So let's get started. First off, set your oven to 375 so it's nice and hot, and now you want to grab 3 pounds of sweet potatoes and give them a peel. Sweet potato casserole is a must for Thanksgiving in my household, and this is one of the side dishes that I'll make 2 days in advance. I step everything out so that my actual Thanksgiving can be really relaxing, or as relaxing as it can be. The secret's just to do things in advance and be prepared. So once this is all assembled in the casserole dish, just cover it up, pop it into the fridge, and then on Thanksgiving Day, you can bake it off as desired. You can of course enjoy this any day of the year, in any season. Let me know if you want a real-time video of me just preparing food ever so slowly. Peel, 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 chop, chop, chop. Clear this away and let's get to chopping. Grab a sharp knife and we're gonna cube this up. Around 1-inch chunks is fine. You just want them to be fairly uniform. Watch those fingers. Transfer your sweet potatoes to a large pot and just keep chopping. By the way, if you like my videos, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. There's 2 new recipes every single week. My sweet potatoes are all chopped up. Now we're gonna fill our large pot with water so they're covered by 1 inch. We're gonna place our sweet potatoes onto high heat and bring them to a boil. This is an optional step, but in my opinion, it's not really optional. It kind of goes without saying. Salt your water, please. I would add a tablespoon of salt to this much water. The water should be almost like ocean water. That'll give you a lot of flavor into these boiled sweet potatoes. Otherwise, they'll be kind of bland and watery. Always salt your water. Might as well cover them. Sweet potato casseroles have been a staple in the US for hundreds of years. It's even featured in our first cookbook, American Cookery by Amelia Simons, which came out in 1796. This recipe is slightly different, and I do want to say you could think of this as a delicious classic that you can take in any direction. Would you like to add a marshmallow topping? Pour them over. It's very easy. I'll give you the instructions for the bake time on that. But you can add so many different things. Like sweet potato casserole can go in a lot of directions, so make this your own by adding your favorites in. Today we're boiling our sweet potatoes, but you can also roast them. I actually love roasting sweet potatoes for this dish because you get a more deep caramelized flavor. If you're doing that, 425 for about 30 minutes, just poke your sweet potatoes all over, and I like to bake them on a baking sheet lined with foil so it's less messy. So a few minutes later, my sweet potatoes have come to a boil. We're gonna reduce heat to medium-high now and let these cook for about 15 to 20 minutes until they're fork tender. So after an appropriate amount of time, my potatoes are now fork tender. We're gonna take this off heat and drain them and get rid of that excess water. If you roasted your sweet potatoes, don't worry about this step. But if you boil them, they could be a little bit waterlogged. So an optional step is putting these guys back onto medium heat and just move them around a bit. It'll get rid of all that excess water, so you'll have nothing but pure sweet potato flavor left. It's the same trick we do for making mashed potatoes. All done. Time to give our very fork tender sweet potatoes a mash with a masher or a large fork. By the way, if your family loves a sweet potato casserole like mine does, you can double this recipe and have a casserole dish filled to the brim or make 2 casserole dishes. It's really the star for Thanksgiving, I think, because my husband and kids love sweet things. Our sweet potatoes are all mashed up. Now we're gonna add some delicious things, starting with a 1/4 cup of brown sugar. It's about 55 grams, but honestly, it's to taste, so add more or less as you please. I'm also adding in a 1/4 cup of butter. If you wanted to, you could use a 1/4 cup of browned butter, which will give you a richer, nuttier flavor. A 1/4 cup of milk. You could use cream if you wanted to. 1 1/4 teaspoon of salt. If you liberally salted your water, you can reduce that by a 1/4 teaspoon. 2 large eggs will bind them together, much like the ring of power. Oh dear. Oh dear. And for some nice depth of flavor, a teaspoon of vanilla. If you didn't want to use vanilla, you could use bourbon or even rum for a lovely little extra kick. I often actually make my vanilla with bourbon instead of vodka. We're gonna stir this up. You could use a wooden spoon or an electric mixer just to get it nicely combined. If you use an electric mixer, you're gonna get a very smooth filling. If you do it by hand, it'll have a little bit more texture, which I enjoy. This looks lovely. And I would point out that now, well, now is a time where you could give it a little taste test and see, oh, would I like a little bit more vanilla or whatever. But yes, you'd be eating some raw egg, so if you're not comfortable with that, just trust me. But if you are, have a taste. Unless it gets you sick, in which case it's not my responsibility. I have my 9 by 13 inch casserole dish out. My oven is nice and hot. This is kind of an optional step. You can give it a little bit of butter just to make sure that nothing sticks. I find this is most helpful if you're using marshmallows because the marshmallows can actually stick. But if you're going marshmallow free for this, just, you know, do as you please. Transfer your mixture into your buttered casserole dish. Spread this out into a nice even layer. This can now get set aside, and it's time to make a delicious brown sugar pecan topping. Grab a cup of pecans. You could toast these, or they could be just regular pecans. And we're gonna give them a nice chop. My pecans are all chopped up. Grab a medium bowl and set those aside. So we're gonna need 1 cup of brown sugar. It's about 220 grams. Plop that right in. A 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 30 grams. And 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. You can use any of your favorite warming spices here too, so a little pinch of nutmeg or allspice, who would say no? Grab a whisk or fork and just give it a good mix. To hold this all together, I'm stirring in a 1/4 cup of melted and cooled butter, and as I said earlier, you can use browned butter for this instead of regular butter for some more depth of flavor. You do want to make sure that your butter is cooled because if it's too hot, it melts the sugar and it turns into a paste instead of a crumble. Grab your pecans and stir those in. Time to crumble this topping all over your casserole. Just make sure that the crumble is scattered over the top evenly and not in one big mound. And now my sweet potato casserole is ready to go into the oven. However, if you were making this in advance, I would keep the crumble separate, cover this up, and then once it's ready to go into the oven, crumble the crumble on top and pop it in. It might need like maybe 2 to 5 extra minutes just because it's gonna be ice cold. If the crumble was on for 2 days, it would just all melt in and it would not be as satisfying to eat. Same thing goes if you're using marshmallows. If you're gonna top it with marshmallows, top it right before it goes into the oven, otherwise those will get melty as well. This is ready to go into the oven, 375 for 25 to 30 minutes. If you're doing marshmallows on top, it'll be about 25 minutes. In you go. You could freeze your assembled and unbaked casserole for up to 3 months, or your baked casserole for up to 3 months. Just wrap really well so it doesn't get freezer burn, and either way you'll want to thaw overnight in the fridge and then let it come to room temperature before either heating it up or baking it. Give it a scoop and just like that, it's ready to enjoy. Creamy, crunchy, salty, and sweet all at the same time. I hope you get a chance to make this recipe, and if you like my videos, hit that subscribe button and check out my Thanksgiving playlist.